I'm Troy Thornton, and you've just viewed a promo of a unique rescue capability called Pararescue. It was provided by an organisation called the National Safety Council of Australia during the 1980s. This is me pictured in 1987 at age 22, having just been selected from thousands of applicants across the country for the NSCA's 1987 Pararescue training course. Pictured here is the team that successfully completed the 1987 course. From the left are Tony Purcell, Andrew Maffett, Mike McFarlane, myself, Graham Fromberg and Richard Mason. As you view the next dozen or so images which capture various aspects of our pararescue training and some of the NSCA's equipment and facilities, I'd like to provide you with some insight into the NSCA's pararescue capability and the training undertaken by the 42 men that qualified as pararescue jumpers and served on the NSCA's pararescue team that operated during the 1980s. Our 1987 course was the sixth of a total of 7 training courses conducted by the NSCA during the 1980s to develop a team of men with highly specialised skill sets required to deliver a unique rescue capability called Pararescue. These skill sets included bushcraft, land and sea navigation, boat handling, sailing, hot and cold climate, land and sea survival, helicopter air crewing, winch and stretcher operations, rock climbing, rappelling and rope rescue operations, open and closed circuit diving, including blackwater search operations, portable hyperbaric chamber operations, land and sea search and rescue procedures, supply dropping, overland and water parachute operations, and satellite UHF-VHF radio communications, all of which was underpinned by medical skill sets including first aid EAR CPR, advanced casualty assessment and triage, airway management, simple wound suturing, and where necessary, insertion of intravenous cannula and administering of IV fluids and prescribed IV or intramuscular drugs. The NSCA's pararescue response capability was an adaptation of aspects of the United States Air Force pararescue and United States Navy SEAL military capabilities that could be applied in civil search and rescue operations. It was particularly useful in scenarios where survivors of downed aircraft or ships at sea required rescue outside of helicopter range. A team of 2 pararescue jumpers flown to the scene in a long-range fixed-wing aircraft could be deployed via parachute with life rafts, survival gear and medical equipment to render physical and medical assistance to survivors until a ship could be diverted to the scene. Sadly, pararescue was lost to Australia after the NSCA organisation collapsed in 1989, and the government decided not to maintain the capability, despite it being used successfully to rescue survivors of downed aircraft and vessels at sea on several occasions throughout the 1980s. Instead, like me, many of my former pararescue colleagues took employment with government emergency services such as the Fire Brigade, and the government reverted to the ad hoc arrangement used prior to the introduction of pararescue, where volunteer commercial wing aircraft operators are utilised to locate survivors, drop supplies and then divert the nearest ship to the scene, which can take many hours and sometimes days. As has been the case for many of my former pararescue colleagues, my experience with the NSCA led to me having the opportunity to go on and enjoy a rewarding career in the emergency services field, where I continue to work to this day. As I'm sure all of my former pararescue team colleagues do, I feel very privileged and proud to have been a part of the NSCA's pararescue team and to have had the opportunity to participate in such a unique rescue capability and service to the Australian community. Much of the team, including me, are pictured in this photo, some proudly wearing our signature red pararescue berets and wings. Please enjoy the remainder of this presentation, which will hopefully give you some more insight into how special the pararescue service capability was. Our motto, so that others may live.
300 kilometres away, the coast of Tasmania. In between, a stretch of water whose moods fluctuate violently. Bass Strait has claimed many lives. Perhaps some of them could have been saved if they could have been reached sooner. Up to 50 kilometres out, a person could be reached by single-engine helicopter. But according to Department of Transport regulations, these operations should be carried out only in sight of land. Further out, survivors could be reached by fixed-wing aircraft, dropping rafts and supplies. But that presupposes that survivors are conscious and able to swim. How do you help somebody further out to sea, say 200 kilometres, given that they might be injured? This is a problem that's been addressed by the Victorian-based National Safety Council of Australia. The NSCA, based in Gippsland, have felt for some time there was a gap in their safety cordon. Normally they could respond with a twin-engine helicopter like this, and their trained rescue team could rappel down to survivors in this fashion. The survivors could then be winched back to safety, but that presupposes a twin-engine helicopter is available. For the last 8 months, the NSCA have been working on a pararescue response using faster fixed-wing aircraft and a new type of parachute designed for military use. A parachute designed for commandos to exit an aircraft at 15,000 feet and glide up to 10 kilometres behind enemy lines without being detected on radar.
It's more like a flying wing or a hang glider than a parachute because it actually develops lift when it's deployed. It's called an X300 because it has 300 square feet of canopy, and it's 20% larger than the normal Ram Air sporting parachute. And because it's larger, it's able to carry more weight. It can carry 180 kilos, and that's the weight of the parachutist and the gear that he's wearing. And that capacity allows the pararescue squad to carry this much gear when they go on their missions far out to sea.
The pararescue squad will exit the search and rescue aircraft wearing between 60 to 80 kilos of equipment, an unheard of amount of gear for conventional square parachute rigs. Amongst that gear are radios with the various international distress frequencies and a transmitter to direct helicopters or shipping to the drop zone. They will also carry oxygen rebreathers. Using these, they'll be able to breathe while swimming through heavy seas. They can use them to make shallow dives, to disentangle propellers, and to search submerged vessels. One of the pararescue team will always have medical training, so if needs be, life-saving operations could be conducted at sea with backup from shore-based medical professionals. They also carry flares and a distress frequency beacon, personal rations, and a one-man life raft around their necks. Today's rescue exercise will be quite testing. 15 kilometres out to sea in a 3-metre swell with winds gusting to 25 knots. Carrying this amount of gear, the jumpers have to feel confident the parachute will open and deploy properly. Laden down with all this bulk, it's that much harder to cast off a malfunctioning chute and open a reserve when jumping from low altitudes. They will also carry this heavy equipment pack. It contains swim fins, dive mask, medical supplies and extra rations. The equipment pack is attached to their harness and will be worn when they jump, but once the chute is deployed, the jumpers will drop it below them on a tether line. It will then act like a gyroscopic stabiliser. The jumpers are now ready to launch themselves into the 100-knot slipstream. The jump master collects the static line, which opens the chute automatically. Once the canopy is deployed, they start flying. The X300 has a glide ratio of 3.5 to 1. That means for every kilometre of altitude, the canopy can fly 3.5 kilometres. There are a few risks involved. Thermal eddies of air, if they strike the chute violently, can deflate it almost instantly, so the jumpers must always be mindful of this when jumping in marginal conditions, when the wind speed exceeds 30 knots. By gauging headwinds and knowing the capabilities of the new parachute, the divers are able to land within metres of a marker buoy. Should this have been a real-life situation, their response time from base, 70 kilometres away, could have been 30 minutes or less. Not an impossible time to survive at sea. There's no doubt the presence of the NSCA pararescue team will give considerable comfort to the people who cross this stretch of water in the future.
And a former member of the rescue team says the accident highlights the need for the elite service. Kylie King reports.
Last weekend, 2 people were killed in a light plane crash off Launceston. A full-scale search failed to find the plane when the alarm was first raised due to a lack of flight plans. Hayfield's Troy Thornton, co-author of a new book, Rescue, says the drama highlights a serious problem.
The incident that occurred on the weekend potentially could have developed into a situation where survivors could have been found or located in the water at long range offshore, somewhere in Bass Strait, say for instance, where a helicopter couldn't fly out and pick them up. At the moment, the resources employed by Australia's responsible search and rescue authorities are inadequate.
The National Safety Council Pararescue team was crucial in several long-range offshore rescue operations in the NSCA's heyday. Although emergency equipment can be dropped off to survivors at sea, urgent medical or physical assistance is now almost impossible. After the NSCA collapse, most services were merged into other operations, but the Pararescue team was denied federal government funding and became defunct. However, an Australian pararescue team was formed to help raise public awareness and push further for government support. Proceeds from the sale of Rescue goes towards the group's operations. It's hoped public pressure, including letters to politicians, will force authorities to take note of the need for the service. The emergency book also takes a different approach to NSCA achievements.
The media at the time of the collapse of the NSCA seemed to focus on all of the negative aspects, the fraudulent activities of John Frederick and the collapse of the organisation itself. Being a former pararescue jumper myself, I was fairly disgruntled at that negative focus, and I thought to myself, how can we sort of acknowledge the people that were responsible for saving many, many lives over a number of years? And a book seemed to be the answer to that question.
Kylie King, Southern Cross News.
Police have issued a